Talking with Dr. Guy Fiocco. He's with New Hanover Medical Group's rheumatology. We're talking, Gannon has a thing now that he calls the pain forecast, where he works this into his forecast when we talk about the fluctuations in the weather. And we were talking, while Gannon was speaking, about the cold weather can actually affect you as far as your joints and your arthritis is concerned.
So, you know, the effect of weather on arthritis has been discussed for years, and it actually has been studied by scientists probably since the early 19th century. Unfortunately, the results are conflicting, so we don't have the definite answer. But there is an AccuWeather forecast that will predict how much your arthritis will bother you by the temperature. And for every 10-degree drop in temperature, people will see a noticeable discomfort in their joints. Cold generally stiffens up the muscles and makes them harder to move, so that that's why people tend to perceive a little more pain there. But when they look at all the aspects of weather, whether it's rain or temperature or humidity or barometric pressure, the thing that usually stands out the most as having the effect is barometric pressure.
And why is that?
Well, so it's a theory. It's not proven, but it's a theory that a lot of people adhere to. So atmospheric pressure puts some pressure on the outside of all of your joints. And when bad weather comes, it usually drops the pressure. Well, that allows the pressure within the joint to expand a little bit, which will stretch the tissues around the joint. And in those tissues are nerve endings, and they'll get irritated from the stretch. And that's why people might feel more discomfort when the bad weather comes.
Yeah, as I say, so now, when my grandmother was telling me, I think the rain's coming, my shoulder's starting to hurt.
That's right. So when grandma says it's going to rain, you might take an umbrella with you.
So, and the cold part I find interesting, with it causing discomfort. Again, before I made the switch to news, I did sports, and you always hear of athletes getting into the cold tub after a football game to relieve themselves of the pain and the inflammation. But now this cold can actually be contradictory to that and actually aggravate arthritis.
So when an athlete ices a joint after using it a lot, it's to try to prevent the inflammation from getting in there. So it closes down some of the blood vessels and prevents a lot of blood flow into that area, which would bring the chemicals that make you perceive the pain and induce the inflammation. But in general, when you have chronic arthritis and the weather gets colder, your muscles will stiffen up and just make it harder to move. So warming up a joint before you go out in the cold makes it a lot more comfortable to tolerate.
In your field, when you practice in an area such as southeastern North Carolina, where our weather, and Gannon would back me up on this, up and down. I mean, we had 2 days where it was frigid. Now we're getting back into the 60s. Do you see a lot of people come in where their physical being just swings with the weather like that?
So again, you hear a lot of patients say that, but when it's studied, and there have been a couple of studies where they hand out surveys in different cities. So there was one big study out of Tufts University that did surveys in San Diego, Nashville, Boston, and Framingham. And it turned out that people in San Diego complained more about the weather changes than in Boston.
And everybody says San Diego is the place to be.
That's
Doctor,
right.
I appreciate it. And I always say, if you have questions about this, anyone else, don't call the blind in the blue coat. Go to the man in the white coat. We're back after this.